This is an incredible account of a supposed Bigfoot encounter near Genoa, Nevada in 1984. The level of detail really adds to the intensity and vividness of the experience. The setting is remote and wild, making it the perfect backdrop for such a mysterious event. Here's a breakdown of some of the most compelling elements. The location was on the eastern Sierra Nevada during fall, with clear skies and the bite in the air around 2 p.m. paints a crisp, serene picture of the surroundings. The presence of towering pines and a creek further deepens the wilderness isolation. It's easy to imagine the quiet, disturbed only by the sounds of nature and the two hikers. The encounter starts with teenage boys running down the mountain, terrified after allegedly seeing a monster. "We saw it! It was huge and hairy like a monster! We gotta get out of here!" Their fear sets the tone for what follows, yet the hikers dismiss it as youthful exaggeration or drug use. The sighting of the creature itself is incredibly detailed, from the smell of something dead or dog do to the description of the creature. The writers note the creature's size, 7 feet tall, its pine needle-colored hair, long arms, and how it walked barefoot on a pine-covered slope without slipping, almost as if perfectly adapted to the environment. What makes this account stand out is the emotional nuance. While initially startled, neither of us felt threatened. In fact, we sensed a mutual curiosity between ourselves and the creature. The detail about the intelligent eyes and serene face contrasts with typical monster narratives, making this Bigfoot encounter seem like a moment of connection between species rather than confrontation. After the creature walked away, the hikers noticed that it continued to follow them from a distance, keeping pace with them, but never getting too close. It's this steady, non-threatening pursuit that adds to the intrigue, as though the Bigfoot was just as curious about them as they were about it. The encounter left the hikers shaken, yet also filled with awe. Even years later, we speak of the encounter as life-changing. We reflect on the possibility that such creatures belong to the wilderness in the same way that deer or other animals do, adding a layer of respect for the mysterious being. Subsequent investigations. Discovering what looked like a natural shelter years later under an overturned tree and around a boulder adds another eerie layer to the story, making it seem like this area is an active habitat for something, perhaps Bigfoot. The year was 2005, season was spring, month was May 5th, state is California, county is El Dorado County, location details. The footprint was found on the shoreline south of Tahoe City and north of Sugar Pine Campground. Nearest town is Tahoe City. Nearest road is likely Highway 89. In early May of 2005, while walking along the beach at Lake Tahoe, my friend and I came across something remarkable. We were combing through the beach gravel, searching for interesting stones, when a large footprint caught our attention. What stood out most was the sheer depth of the impression, about 3 inches deep. The stones at the base of the print had been compacted with such force that it seemed as if a massive weight had pressed them into the earth. There were a few other prints around, but none were as clear or as deep as this one. The location was between Tahoe City and Sugar Pine Campground, along the gravelly shore of the lake. Also noticed, the day before, fish had been actively jumping at the end of a nearby dock. Oddly, after spending 3 hours fishing on the day we found the footprint, we didn't see a single fish. Other witnesses, myself and my friend. Other stories. I've read reports in this region, both to the north and south, about similar findings, footprints near Truckee and around the Sugar Pine Campground area. Time and conditions. It was the afternoon, with a brief break in the otherwise rainy weather.
Story 4. Creature stepping over a fir sapling. Year was 1998. Season was winter. Date was December 28th. State is California. County is Del Norte County. Location details is east of Highway 101, just south of Smith River. On the evening of December 22nd, 1998 at about 5 p.m., my son and I were driving westbound on Lake Earl Drive, approaching the intersection with Highway 101. A fresh layer of snow had just blanketed the area, and my son was admiring a snow-covered section of the mountain that had recently been clear-cut. As I glanced up in the same direction, I noticed something that made me do a double take. A large human-like figure covered in reddish-brown fur walking down the mountain. The creature stood at an estimated height of 7 or 8 feet tall, and I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. That was until my son exclaimed, "Oh shit!" confirming that I wasn't imagining things. We both sat in stunned silence, watching as the creature continued its descent. At one point, it effortlessly stepped up and over a fir sapling as if it were nothing. It paused briefly, as though looking around, before resuming its path. Over the course of about 400 yards, it walked down the mountain and disappeared into the forest at the base of the hill. It wasn't until the creature was out of sight that we noticed 3 other cars had pulled over as well, their occupants also watching the same bizarre sight. We were all too shocked to say anything at the time. Other witnesses, my son and drivers in 3 other cars. Time and conditions. Around 5 p.m., following a fresh snowfall, environment. A thickly forested area with a clear-cut hillside. The location is about half a mile south of the Smith River.
A man in 4x4 encounters creature on the highway. The year was 2003, season was fall and month was September, date was September 20th, 2003, state of California, county is Del Norte County. The encounter took place on a hillside. The left side of the road was the uphill slope and the right side dropped down the hill. The creature was on the right where it ran downhill. Nearest town Klamath, nearest road Highway 101. Late at night on September 20th, 2003, I was driving home along Highway 101 between Oric and Klamath. My Jeep is equipped with 4 high-powered off-road lights, so I had a good view about 100 yards ahead. That's when I spotted what I initially thought was a bear on the side of the road. As I got closer, about 50 yards out, the thing stood up, and what I had thought was a bear now appeared to be human-shaped. The bright lights of my Jeep cast a clear silhouette. My Jeep has a 3-inch lift, and the roof sits at about 6.5 feet, but this figure was much taller than my vehicle. By the time I was just 20 yards away, the creature leaped off the road and disappeared into the darkness below. At that moment, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It dawned on me that what I had just witnessed wasn't a bear or a human, it was Bigfoot. Also noticed. I was too scared to stop and kept driving. Other witnesses, just me, other stories. Yes, I've heard of other sightings in Klamath, Oric, and near Crescent City. Time and conditions. Between 11 and 11:30 p.m., with a bright moon and clear skies. Environment, dense redwood forest.
Story 3. Glowing red eyes at a campfire. Years is 1979. Season was spring. Month was May. State is California. County is Del Norte County. Location details near the Smith River, in a small park within Simpson Grove, about a mile west of Highway 199. In May 1979, my husband, 3 friends, and I were sitting around a campfire after dinner in a small park along the Smith River. It was a typical peaceful night in the woods, and we were simply talking and relaxing when a loud crashing and rustling noise came from about 50 feet away. The sudden disturbance caught all of our attention at once, and when we turned to look, we were stunned. We saw a set of glowing red eyes staring right back at us. These weren't reflective eyes like those of a typical animal caught in the light, but instead, they seemed to emit their own eerie glow, much like a pair of red lights. The eyes were about 8 feet off the ground, and although it was too dark to see the creature's outline clearly, we could tell it was massive. For what felt like an eternity, but was probably just a minute or so, the eyes remained fixed on us. Then just as suddenly, it turned and walked away, making the same crashing noise it had made when it first appeared. We all sat in stunned silence for a few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. None of us spoke until the shock wore off, but we all agreed it was an incredibly spooky experience. We've lived, hunted, camped, and fished in this area for years, but we had never encountered anything like this before or since. Other witnesses, my husband and 3 friends. Time and conditions. Around 10 p.m. on a calm night in May 1979. Environment. A densely wooded, mountainous area filled with old-growth redwood trees next to the Smith River. The elevation is about 250 feet.
Daylight sighting by deer hunter. Year was 1976, season was fall, month was November, state is New Mexico, county is Otero County. The sighting occurred in the mountains, surrounded by a dense pine forest. It was during deer hunting season. Unfortunately, I don't recall the exact location, as it's been many years and I never returned to that spot. I was a young man at the time, nearest town Pinon, New Mexico, nearest road Highway 24. It was in 1976 when I went deer hunting with a couple of my cousins in Otero County, somewhere between the areas of Weed and Pinon, New Mexico. I've always been a bit of a loner, so I decided to head off in my own direction while my cousins went another way. As I was climbing up the side of a mountain, I spotted some wild turkeys running uphill and decided to follow them. When I reached the top, I began descending the small meadow in the arroyo below. The trees were so dense I had to move on my knees to navigate through them. After a while, I stopped to rest and watched the meadow from where I was crouched. Suddenly, from the left side of the clearing, something emerged from the tree line. It walked along the edge of the meadow before disappearing back into the forest on the other side. Whatever it was, it never noticed me, and I wasn't about to wait around for it to see me. The creature I saw was tall, probably 6.5 to 7 feet in height, covered in long black hair and walked upright like a man. It had a muscular, heavy-set build and even its face was covered in hair. I knew immediately it wasn't a bear or any animal I had ever seen before in my years of hunting. I didn't tell anyone about the encounter for a long time, not until recently when I mentioned it to my grandkids. They laughed it off, so I don't talk about it anymore. But I know what I saw. I had my Remington 300 BDL rifle with me that day, but I never raised my gun. If I ever saw another one, I wouldn't shoot. I've hunted all my life and have seen all kinds of wildlife, including bears. What I saw that day was not a bear. Other witnesses, none. I didn't hear of anything similar until I got online recently. It was during the morning hours with good lighting, though somewhat windy. The area was mostly pine forest in a mountainous region with meadows scattered in certain spots. Aguilera's encounter. Father and son's close-range sighting on Jeep Trail. Year was 2024. The season was spring. Month was June. Date was June 30th. State is New Mexico. County Iscatron County. The sighting occurred in a meadow bordered by pine forests on either side, at an elevation of around 7,000 feet. My son and I were off-roading on the Chloride Trail. Nearest town was Gila National Forest. Nearest road Chloride off-road trail.
It was drizzling lightly when we saw it, standing less than 10 feet from the road. It was about 25 feet away from a single tree. The creature had hair that looked like a mop or dreadlocks, though thinking back, it was probably matted from the rain. What stood out most was its nose, perfectly angular, with a flat, triangular shape along the bridge. I live in South Texas, about 1,000 miles from the sighting, but my son and I were filled with doubt about what we had seen. I initially told only my wife, but the thought of it being a stump wouldn't leave my mind. So the following weekend, we drove the 1,000 miles back to the exact spot. When we got there, no trees or stumps were anywhere near where we'd seen it, but there was a footprint in the exact place. I took a picture of it. That night, we had been driving slowly, about 2 miles per hour. It seems like we might have caught the creature crossing the meadow, and it stayed still, possibly trying to blend in and make us think it was part of the landscape.
Other witnesses, myself and my 13-year-old son. I live in Texas, so I'm not familiar with any Bigfoot history in this area. Time and conditions 9:45 p.m., drizzling, about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. We were in my F-150 Raptor with LED lights and 4 fog lights on. The environment was a meadow between 2 pine forests at an elevation of over 7,000 feet. Witness encounters Bigfoot on the shores of Oak Creek. Year was around 1983. Season was summer. Month was July. State is Arizona. County is Coconino County. We had a Labrador with us. He wasn't the brightest dog, not afraid of anything, and always tried to follow me wherever I went. But during this trip, I found him trembling at the back of the tent, terrified. He refused to leave the tent on these occasions, even fighting me to stay inside. Nearest town between Sedona and Flagstaff, nearest road Highway 89. At the time, my family was really into camping, and even now I hunt and fish whenever I get the chance. During this trip, we camped along Oak Creek in the Slide Rock area. As usual, I went off by myself to fish along the riverbank. Behind me, the forest was dense with thick underbrush and tall trees. While I was focused on fishing, I suddenly heard footsteps behind me. Not normal footsteps, but heavy thudding ones. When I turned around, I didn't see anything, and the sound stopped. I went back to my fishing, but the thumping footsteps returned. This time, when I looked, I heard something else. Heavy, deep breathing. At just 13 years old, I was scared. I flattened my back against a tree, trying to stay as still as possible while searching for the source of the noise. The thudding continued along with the breathing, and I could tell whatever it was close. I stayed frozen like that for about 20 minutes, trying not to move as I listened, heart racing. Finally, the sound stopped. I convinced myself it was just my imagination and tried to get back to fishing, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then the thumping and breathing started again. This time I saw it, a shadowy figure in the thick woods to my left. It was dark brown or black, with shaggy fur about 3 inches long. It stood about 6 or 7 feet tall and was moving away at an angle, about 35 to 40 feet from me. As quickly as I saw it, it vanished into the dense trees. Other witnesses, our Labrador, who usually wasn't afraid of anything, had several moments during the trip, both at night and once during the day, where he refused to come out of the tent. He was shaking uncontrollably at the back of the tent, and when I tried to get him out, he resisted and stayed huddled inside, visibly scared. Time and conditions midday to late afternoon. The environment was a dense forest with lots of undergrowth. Knocks and whooping sounds heard north of Clint's Well. The year was 2007. Season was summer, month was August 4th and 5th. State is Arizona, county is Coconino County. Location was approximately 5 miles north of Highway 87 and 3 miles west of Lake Mary Road. Nearest town is Strawberry, Arizona. Nearest road is Highway 87 and Lake Mary Road. During the weekend of August 4th and 5th, 2007, my friend, girlfriend, son and I went camping near Clint's Well, Arizona for an archery shoot. The area is located between Strawberry and Winslow, Arizona, and I live about an hour away. We camped in a forested area just off Lake Mary Road near Clint's Well. Early in the morning on August 5th, around 3 a.m., I was suddenly awakened in my tent by the sound of loud wood knocking west of our camp. It was the distinct sound of wood striking against a tree. I lay there listening for about 10 minutes when I heard several whoop sounds, about 3 in total. These whoops were consistent with recordings I'd heard before on certain websites. After waiting for about half an hour with no further sounds, I eventually drifted back to sleep. The next morning I spoke with my friend, a Native American who had been in the tent next to mine. He asked if I had been woken up by the noises the previous night. I confirmed what I had heard, and he told me that he had heard the exact same sounds. Later, when we returned to our remote campsite, we searched for any signs of activity in the area. Unfortunately, it had rained that afternoon and we found nothing. I've lived in Arizona my entire life, and at 31 years old I'm very familiar with the woods. As a police officer, I spend a lot of my days off in the wilderness hunting elk, deer, bear, javelina, and other wildlife. However, I've never encountered those kinds of whoop noises in all my years of hunting or camping. The sound reminded me of a howler monkey, something you'd hear on TV. I know there have been many reported sightings on the White Mountain Apache Reservation and near Heber, Arizona, which aren't too far from where we were camping. Other witnesses, one witness, my friend, who was in the tent next to mine. Time and condition were around 3 a.m., dark with damp ground due to afternoon monsoon rains. The environment was a heavy pine and oak forest, damp from the recent rains. And that wraps up these terrifying Bigfoot encounters, chilling true tales from the depths of the wilderness. Remember, the next time you venture into the woods, you never know what might be watching. If you enjoyed these spine-tingling stories, please like and subscribe to stay tuned for more mysterious and unsettling encounters. Your support means the world. Thank you.